And as always, when you hear that applause, it's time for another episode in my podcast series, Patrick's Place, coming to you live from Studio 62. Remember, you can subscribe to my podcast by going to my YouTube channel and type in Patrick Anderson Jamaica or Patrick Anderson Radio. The podcast will pop up and you should subscribe. Now, also keep your comments coming. I do take the time to read them because all ideas must contend. I'm a firm believer in the First Amendment. Right. And as I promised, my August 29 edition of Patrick's Place, I will be providing a forecast of the general elections in Jamaica, which will take place on Wednesday, September 3. I will be predicting and calling the outcome of the election. Now, I have been covering elections since the 1980s. My first election I covered was the local government elections in 1986. I am a student of politics. I have studied the elections all the way back to our first election held under universal adult suffrage back in 1944, and I found that the turnout of the electorate was and has been consistently high. It was just a period between 2010 and 2015-16 that voter apathy kind of set in, and actually it coincided with that same time frame across the world in Europe and the United States that we saw voter apathy set in, and voters across the world, not just Jamaica, really took a dislike for voting, maybe of the viewpoint that, no better herring, no better barrel, so they just decided to sit out elections during that period. But let me just tell you, I also am a student of the late Professor Carl Stone, and when I say a student, I didn't have the good fortune for him to teach me at the University of the West Indies, but I really pay attention to his work, is what I mean. I also pay a lot of attention to the current doyen of Jamaican polling, Don Anderson. And what I want to talk about in reference to Carl Stone is that he pointed out the uniqueness of the Jamaican electorate and what is important to them, and I want you to remember this on election day, is that party affiliation, party identification is extremely important to them, and that there is that psychological attachment that is crucial to them, to their party of choice. Their attitude towards the candidates is really a short-term feeling. It is more, I'm voting for the party, and so it doesn't really matter who the candidate is. That perhaps may not be that way today, and when I say today, I mean in contemporary politics, but it still carries some sway. And then the third pillar for the Jamaican electorate is that their attitude towards the key issues kind of comes below those. Now, party loyalty and the systemic support within the country's political landscape is really what shapes how the electorate vote. And so I want you to remember that. Let me also remind you of the latest Don Anderson polls, well-publicized polls, when he went into the field in early August 2, and came out the field in August 11 and found that the People's National Party's lead of 9 percentage points a year ago, back in September of 2024, was completely wiped out. Momentum for the Jamaica Labour Party. The PNP still had the lead. It's a statistical dead heat. 34.7% the PNP, the JLP 33.9% in August, and so the PNP with only a 0.8 percentage point lead, and it is a very, very tight race. Remember that poll, because things are kind of changing. Remember I said to you that there is momentum with the Jamaica Labour Party, but I also want to take you back I did say to you that, voter turnout has been relatively good, relatively high in this country over the years, and I'm going to take you back all the way to our election back in 1962, in April of 1962, when Alexander Bustamante defeated then Premier Norman Manley in that April 1962 general elections. And so when we became politically independent in August of 1962, Bustamante was Jamaica's first prime minister. The turnout in that 1962 election in April was 73%. The turnout in the 1967 elections, won again by the Jamaica Labour Party, was 82.2%. Can you believe that? In 1972, the turnout was 78.9%, won by the PNP. In 1976, it crept all the way up to 85.2%. And then in 1980, a record 86.91% voter turnout when the JLP swept the PNP out of office. The Jamaica Labour Party, in that election, they won 51 seats to the PNP's 9 seats. Then in 1983, that really was nothing to write home about, a 2.68 percentage turnout. But you remember that that election was boycotted by the People's National Party, so that was an outlier. In 1989, the turnout 78%, the PNP returned to power. In 1993, the PNP returned to power with a turnout of 67.35%. So it started to dip there. In 1997, the PNP returned to power, 65.2%. In 2002, the People's National Party again returned to power with a turnout of 59.06%. It went up a bit to 61% in 2007 when Bruce Golding led the Jamaica Labour Party to victory, ending 18 years of being in the political wilderness. And the turnout there in 2007 was 61.4%. So it ticked up. It then started to go down a bit again in 2011. 53.17%, where the People's National Party was returned to power. We saw 3 election cycles where the electorate gave the winning party one term. It was perform or perish. In 2016, the Jamaica Labour Party returned to power with Andrew Honez. 2016, it was the turnout there was in 2016 48.4% turnout. So that it was during that time, remember I told you, 2010 to the period 2015-16, where voter apathy really set in across the globe. And it coincided with what happened in Jamaica, a turnout of 48.4%. And then in 2020, the COVID year, again an outlier, the turnout was 37.85%. But let me even take you further back. In 1944, the first elections in Jamaica under universal adult suffrage, the turnout there, the election won by the Jamaica Labour Party, the turnout was 58.68%. The JLP won yet again in 1949 with a turnout of 65.16%. In 1955, the PNP won with a turnout of 65%, and the PNP won yet again in 1959 with a turnout of 66%. In 2020, folks, the COVID elections, the JLP scored a massive and mammoth victory under the leadership of Prime Minister Andrew Honez. They won 49 seats to 14 by the People's National Party. Now, since that poll in early August, things have kind of tilted just a bit. My studies, my research, my work is showing me, and the statistics have pointed to this outcome that I am predicting for the elections on September 3. At worst, a 37 to 26 margin, and at best, a 39 to 24 seat margin. Mark Golding will form the next government in Jamaica. He will lead the People's National Party to victory and form the next government. That's how I see it. We'll see how it matches up with the elections on Wednesday, September 3. I will be live streaming and we'll be taking you through the results just as the seats are called, saying, you know, is this a surprise? Is this not a surprise? And we will be with you until the elections are called. So until then, be well, be safe, subscribe on YouTube, Patrick Anderson Jamaica, or Patrick Anderson Radio. Be well.